Inflation is back, baby. After years of relatively stable prices, we're seeing a surge in the cost of living. From groceries to gas, everything seems to be getting more expensive by the day. But why is this happening now? What has triggered this sudden spike in inflation? And guess what? It's not our fault. Politicians and corporate executives are quick to point fingers elsewhere. They say it's due to external factors beyond their control, but is that really the whole story? Or is there more going on behind the scenes? Remember when things were affordable? Pepperidge Farm remembers. There was a time when a dollar could stretch a lot further. Families could fill their shopping carts without breaking the bank. But those days seem like a distant memory now. Those days are long gone, my friends. Inflation is back with a vengeance. Empty supermarket shelves and skyrocketing prices are becoming the new normal. It's a harsh reality that many are struggling to cope with. And who's to blame? Certainly not the brilliant leaders who are supposed to be managing our economy. They assure us that they're doing everything they can, but are they really? Or are they just passing the buck? No, it's those greedy consumers always wanting more. We're told that our insatiable demand is driving prices up. But is that fair? Are we really the ones at fault for wanting to live comfortably? It's the global supply chain being all complicated. Disruptions and delays are causing shortages and price hikes. But is this the whole picture, or is it just another convenient excuse? It's the rain in Spain, probably. Weather events and natural disasters are often blamed for economic woes. But can we really pin all our problems on the weather? Anything but the people in charge. It's easier to blame external factors than to take responsibility. But until we address the root causes, inflation will continue to be a thorn in our side. Shareholder value, the holy grail that makes everything more expensive. Our economy runs on one simple principle: shareholder value. Companies exist to make profits, lots of profits. And how do they do that? By keeping costs low and prices high, of course. What's that, you say? Wages haven't kept up with inflation for decades. Well, that's just the price we pay for a thriving economy. Don't worry, those CEOs deserve their multi-million-dollar bonuses. They're the real heroes here. Tariffs, because protecting domestic industries totally justifies price hikes, right? But let's dive deeper into this concept. Tariffs are essentially taxes imposed on imported goods. The idea is to make foreign products more expensive, thereby encouraging consumers to buy domestic products instead. It's a strategy that has been used for centuries, and it continues to be a hot topic in economic discussions today. Trade is complicated. Sometimes we have to protect our domestic industries from those pesky foreigners who dare to offer lower prices. This protectionist approach is often justified by the need to safeguard local jobs and industries. By imposing tariffs, governments aim to level the playing field for domestic producers who might struggle to compete with cheaper imports. However, this approach is not without its critics. That's where tariffs come in. By slapping a hefty tax on imported goods, we can make sure that American consumers have no choice but to buy American. This can lead to higher prices for consumers, but the hope is that it will also lead to a stronger domestic economy. The idea is that by supporting local businesses, we can create more jobs and boost economic growth. But is it really that simple? Sure, it might cost them a bit more, but that's a small price to pay for patriotism. Or is it? Critics argue that tariffs can lead to trade wars, where countries retaliate by imposing their own tariffs on our exports. This can hurt our own industries and lead to higher prices for everyone. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. And hey, if those tariffs happen to benefit certain campaign donors, well, that's just a happy coincidence. The intersection of politics and economics is always a tricky one. While tariffs can be used to protect domestic industries, they can also be influenced by political agendas and lobbying efforts. It's important to consider who really benefits from these policies and at what cost to the average consumer. Nixon's economic masterpiece, wage and price controls. Spoiler alert, they didn't work. Remember the 1970s? Disco, bell-bottoms, and runaway inflation. Good times. Back then, President Nixon had a brilliant idea: wage and price controls. The government would simply dictate how much businesses could charge and how much workers could earn. Problem solved, right? Well, not so much. It turns out that controlling the economy is a bit more complicated than that. Who knew? The Federal Reserve, they're like the janitors of the economy, except instead of mops and buckets, they have interest rates and quantitative easing. Their job is to keep inflation in check and prevent the whole system from collapsing. It's a thankless task, especially when politicians keep making their jobs harder. But hey, at least they have those fancy meetings where they get to wear suits and pretend they know what they're doing. Remember when a bag of chips was actually full of chips? Me neither. That's because of shrinkflation, the insidious practice of reducing product sizes while keeping prices the same. Sure, they'll tell you it's about portion control or environmental sustainability, but we all know the truth. They're just trying to squeeze every last penny out of us. And the worst part, they're getting away with it. Politicians love to boast about economic growth. It's their bread and butter. But what they don't tell you is that not all growth is created equal. Sometimes it's just a sugar rush fueled by cheap credit and unsustainable spending. And when the party's over, we're all left with the hangover inflation, debt, and a whole lot of regret. But hey, at least those politicians got re-elected, right? When it comes to inflation, there's always plenty of blame to go around. Politicians blame each other, businesses blame consumers, consumers blame the universe. It's a vicious cycle of finger-pointing and buck-passing, and meanwhile the cost of everything keeps going up. But hey, that's life in the modern economy, just another day ending in Y. If there's one thing we can learn from history, it's that we never learn from history. From the gold standard to the Great Depression, from stagflation to the financial crisis of 2008, we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. But hey, that's the beauty of economics. It's like a giant casino where the house always wins, and the rest of us, we're just along for the ride. So can we fix this inflation problem? Maybe, maybe not. The truth is, inflation is a multifaceted issue that affects every aspect of our economy. From the price of groceries to the cost of housing, it touches our daily lives in ways we often don't even realize. And while some experts believe that with the right policies and strategies we can bring it under control, others are not so optimistic. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. The financial markets are volatile, and the global economy is interconnected in ways that make it difficult to predict outcomes. Every decision made by policymakers can have far-reaching consequences, sometimes in ways that are completely unexpected. But one thing's for sure, it's going to take more than just wishful thinking and empty promises from our leaders. We need concrete actions and a clear vision for the future. Politicians and business leaders must come together to create sustainable solutions that address the root causes of inflation rather than just treating the symptoms. It's going to require real solutions, tough choices, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. This means making decisions that may not be popular in the short term, but are necessary for long-term stability. It also means being open to new ideas and innovative approaches that can help us navigate these turbulent times. But hey, who are we kidding? The reality is that change is hard and people are often resistant to it. It's easier to stick with what we know, even if it's not working, than to take a risk on something new. That's never going to happen. The inertia of the status quo is powerful, and breaking free from it requires a level of commitment and determination that is often lacking in our leaders. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Because while we may not be able to control the forces of inflation, we can at least try to understand them and prepare ourselves for whatever comes next. It's only going to get bumpier from here. The road ahead is uncertain, and there will undoubtedly be challenges and setbacks. But with resilience and adaptability, we can navigate through these times and emerge stronger on the other side.